I have to say hello. I am a temporary head of the master program. The normal head, Mrs. Daskalova, is currently specializing in Harvard, so I'm head in acting. Otherwise, it is a really unique master program, a European master program carried out in partnership with various universities. The Vienna University, the University of Lyon, the Central European University in Budapest, and the Nottingham University, and I hope that this year a Scottish university will join the master program. However, I'm not going to talk about this master program today. I'm going to talk about our issue at hand. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak today. I accepted the invitation heartily, but after accepting, I wondered what can I talk about, what can be my contribution to the discussion. For good or for bad, I have never been in a conflict situation except a conflict situation at home, because I'm a mother of a teenager and I have experienced conflict of generations. And I have never worked in an institution that deals with the issue of women in conflicts. So I figured that my contribution can be to share the experience of colleagues with whom I worked for 5 years within a very large-scale European project supported by the 6th Framework Program by the European Commission. It's called MicroCom, or Micro-Level Analysis of Conflicts. That's the name of the project. Under this project, the Bulgarian team did not tackle a Bulgarian conflict situation, but many of the other colleagues worked on such issues, and their interests were wide-spanning. I have to say that the issues of women and gender issues in general were not central to the project. So, I would like to ask the following question. What do we think, what do we see when we look through the gender lenses? My personal opinion, and I would like to give you a few examples to argue, and also mention some field research with various conflict areas, not Congo, but other areas as well. So first of all, I think that if we do not take specific interest into gender issues or women's situation, often we do not notice the presence of women in conflicts. We also do not notice their changing roles in conflicts. For example, in recent weeks, we have heard a lot about the refugees from Syria here in Bulgaria, and of course the main issue, which is particularly relevant, is whether Europe will give us any financial support, how it will give us this support, and how much. But we hear very little about the gender of the refugees and their ages. We speak about the danger of rising crime, but what if 2/3 or 3/4 of these refugees are women and children? Then will it be okay? Will it be fine to think that there is danger from them? So this does not reflect what we can do to support the refugees, actually. We realize that we will try to support the education of the children, but what if Syrian families believe that their young girls do not need education at all? This is a complete misplacement of the issue. So, attention, women in conflicts. What situations do women in conflict situation are in? According to a feminist, Cynthia Enlow, we need feminist curiosity, that is, the interest to the meaning and the role of the category gender in political discourse and actions. Otherwise, the picture would not be complete, or it will be distorted, and our actions will not be adequate. And I have tried to imagine the places of women in conflicts in that regard. First of all, they are usually victims of violence or they are affected by conflict. Here I draw a difference between immediate direct victims of conflicts and those that are affected in a wider sense. In this sense, we can talk about women as subject of protection. And thus, the responsibility to protect women is a huge one. But women can also be participants in conflicts. There are women terrorists. Women can be peacekeepers as participants in peacekeeping missions or in peace-building missions. This changes their perspective. This puts them in a different situation. Then we should not so much protect them. Of course we should. But there are other things. Also, women are in post-conflict situations, and I'm going to elaborate on it later on. So, apart from subjects of care and protection, women are also active actors in conflicts or partners from various sides. Mrs. Bongolova mentioned the importance of empowerment and activity of women. So, to some extent, I would like to question the stereotype of women as weak, as passive, as needy of care and protection. Although in various situations they do need care and protection indeed. First of all, in order to assist women in conflict situations, we need to see them, both literally and figuratively. How can we see them? First of all, in statistics. We need desegregation of statistics. We need a breakdown of statistics according to gender. What I started with, what part of the Syrian refugees in Bulgaria are women, for example? Then, statistics is very often blind to the category of gender. Statistics uses seemingly neutral categories, but very often they are oriented in such a way as to suggest that the units mentioned are genderless, and often it is accepted that they are men. And of course we have social and cultural norms related to gender. We already mentioned these. Taking into account gender can explain several behavioral models, attitudes and practices that often impact on social transformation. Often they are the reason for the failure of social transformations even. Often there are traditional stereotypes that men are the breadwinners, they provide the income of the family, they are the decision takers, and the women are at home and they take care of the children. Colette Harris has made comparative studies, and we have used her articles in the project that I mentioned in the beginning. So Colette Harris shows that these norms are valid in various different cultures. But however, in conflict situations, those norms tend to change, and Mrs. Bongolova mentioned about the loss of status. And the last thing we need to take into account is the naturalization of gender differences in political discourse. Very often we speak of world policy without taking account of the issue of gender, and it is a way of masking power relations. We mentioned this when we spoke of Afghanistan as well. So, women as subject of violence and women partners, women actors. Very often, women are affected by conflicts in various ways. Men are the ones mobilized, hurt, killed. Women are victims of sexual violence more often, sometimes of robbery, and sometimes they remain alone as sole caretakers of the families in the absence of men who are either mobilized or even killed. This happens in conflict or post-conflict situations. The link that I have posted here is to an article by Anna Lindley. It's actually a field study on Somalian refugees. According to it, we see how differently women and men are affected by conflicts. Then we have power relations of women in communities, and especially related to traditions. Here, apart from gender, an important aspect is age as well. In certain societies, older women have greater power than young men. Sometimes this is an unsaid rule, unspoken rule. The link that I have posted is to a study by Fred Lindy in women in Uganda. It seems that widows in Uganda have no land claims over the land of their husbands, and if their husbands die, they turn out to be alone, and they can use only the help of their own biological families, not their in-laws. And this makes them victims as well, in a larger sense of the word, and also it makes them need support and protection. And last but not least, we need to mention the higher vulnerability of women in new forms of discrimination. And here I have posted another link. It refers to a case which is close to us in Bosnia. It is a study by Kathleen Jennings and Vesna Nikolic-Ristanovic on sex industry around the peacekeeping mission in Bosnia. I will talk about this later on as well. Now, moving on to the next slide, women as subjects and partners. This is my second assumption, or thesis, if you want. The fact that women can be active, that we should not just be responsible for their protection. Women can be active in conflict, and particularly in post-conflict situations. So, to build upon what has already been said, women assume the responsibility for supporting their families. Sometimes this has an empowering and a releasing effect, but very often the jobs they assume are low qualified and low paid. So very often we are talking about exploitation rather than women empowerment. The challenges of post-conflict situations, on the one hand, the presence of international missions and the activities of international missions might lead to realizing the need for education, to improving opportunities for education for women, because very often women remain on the labor market and their self-esteem is boosted. On the other hand, however, there is pressure to bring women back to their traditional roles. Here I have given you another link, an article by Calderon and Ibanez on the effect of rural to city migration in Colombia. It turns out that city women are threatened by migrant women from villages who work for lower wages. On the other hand, men immigrants who have lower qualification are threatened by the change of roles within the family. So men are no longer the breadwinners, women become the breadwinners, and this leads to a shift in traditional roles. And last but not least, the contribution of women towards peacekeeping. Here I have given you a case study of Palestine, where women's peacekeeping organizations are very important. It turns out that those organizations can be very efficient partners to international organizations, so that international aid can reach its targets. And here I have quoted a study by Benoit Chalan on international aid and Palestinian women's organizations. The last slide evokes an appeal. Listen to women. I don't mean it in a submissive sort of way. I mean in the sense that listen to what women have to say. On the one hand, I'm not sure that one size fits all is really valid. Something that is efficient in Palestine might not be efficient in Afghanistan, or something that works in Afghanistan might not be efficient in Congo, and so on. On the other hand, unwanted side effects of peacekeeping missions are something to be taken into account as well. The study by Jennings and Ristanovic shows that apart from abuse and criminal behavior, peacekeeping missions in Bosnia have a distorted image of the situation of women in Bosnia, of the culture in Bosnia, and sexual behavior there. On the other hand, women offering sexual services to officers of peacekeeping missions sometimes are satisfied because the officers pay well and never beat them up, something which is not always the case. And around these peacekeeping missions, human trafficking flourished, and coercion into prostitution flourished as well. And this is what I mean by those unwanted side effects of peacekeeping missions. The international community attracted attention towards this issue. And finally, an important thing is not just disarmament and democratization, but also the recovery of the social tissue in communities. This doesn't mean that they will be the way that they used to be before. The recovery of social tissue doesn't mean recovery of the status quo, but what I mean is focused action in areas where women can be active. And last, fast recovery and long-term peace can be possible if all social groups are represented, and this includes women. The link that I have posted here is a study by Patricia Justino and Becky Mitchell, based on various conflict spots such as Liberia, Sierra Leone, Bosnia and Kosovo, and others. The study shows something similar to what you, Mr. Volchev, said, saying that very often in post-conflict situations, the communities not just restore their living conditions, but sometimes even improve the living conditions. This doesn't mean that conflicts in themselves are a positive thing. It means that people can deal with them, and they do it. Thank you for your attention.